Section 10 of the Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Beth Blakely. The Arabian Nights Entertainments, Volume 4, translated by Jonathan Scott. Section 10. The Story of the Sisters Who Envied Their Younger Sister. Part 2. One day when the two princes were hunting and the princess had remained at home, a religious old woman came to the gate and desired leave to go in and say her prayers, it being then the hour. The servants asked the princess's permission, who ordered them to show her into the oratory, which the intendant of the emperor's gardens had taken care to fit up in his house for want of a mosque in the neighborhood. She bade them also, after the good woman had finished her prayers, show her the house and gardens, and then bring her to her. The old woman went into the oratory, said her prayers, and when she came out, two of the princess's women invited her to see the house and gardens, which civility she accepted, followed them from one apartment to another, and observed, like a person who understood what belonged to furniture, the nice arrangement of everything. They conducted her also into the garden, the disposition of which she found so well planned that she admired it, observing that the person who had formed it must have been an excellent master of his art. Afterwards she was brought before the princess, who waited for her in the great hall, which in beauty and richness exceeded all that she had admired in the other apartments. As soon as the princess saw the devout woman, she said to her, "My good mother, come near and sit down by me. I am overjoyed at the happiness of having the opportunity of profiting from some moments by the good example and conversation of such a person as you, who have taken the right way by dedicating yourself to the service of God. I wish everyone were as wise." The devout woman, instead of sitting on a sofa, would only sit upon the edge of one. The princess would not permit her to do so, but rising from her seat, and taking her by the hand, obliged her to come and sit by her. The good woman, sensible of the civility, said, "Madam, I ought not to have so much respect shown me, but since you command, and are mistress of your own house, I will obey you." When she had seated herself, before they entered into any conversation, one of the princess's women brought a little low stand of mother-of-pearl and ebony, with a china dish full of cakes upon it, and many others set around it, full of fruits in season, and wet and dry sweetmeats. The princess took up one of the cakes, and presenting her with it, said, "Eat, good mother, and make choice of what you like best. You had need to eat after coming so far." "Madam," replied the good woman, "I am not used to eat such delicacies, but will not refuse what God has sent me by so liberal a hand as yours." While the devout woman was eating, the princess ate a little too, to bear her company, and asked her many questions upon the exercise of devotion which she practiced, and how she lived. All which she answered with great modesty. Talking of several things, at last she asked her what she thought of the house, and how she liked it. "Madam," answered the devout woman, "I must certainly have very bad taste to disapprove anything in it, since it is beautiful, regular, and magnificently furnished with exactness and judgment, and all its ornaments adjusted in the best manner. Its situation is an agreeable spot, and no garden can be more delightful, but yet if you will give me leave to speak my mind freely, I will take the liberty to tell you that this house would be incomparable if it had three things which are wanting to complete it." "My good mother," replied the Princess Parizadeh, "what are those? I conjure you, in God's name, to tell me what they are. I will spare nothing to get them if it be possible." "Madam," replied the devout woman, "the first of these three things is the speaking bird, so singular a creature that it draws round it all the singing birds of the neighborhood, which come to accompany his song. The second is the singing tree, the leaves of which are so many mouths, which form a harmonious concert of different voices and never cease. The third is the yellow water of a gold color, a single drop of which being poured into a vessel properly prepared, it increases so as to fill it immediately, and rises up in the middle like a fountain, which continually plays, and yet the basin never overflows." "Ah, my good mother," cried the princess, "how much am I obliged to you for the knowledge of these curiosities! They are surprising, and I never before heard there were such wonderful rarities in the world. But as I am persuaded that you know, I expect that you should do me the favor to inform me where they are to be found." "Madam," replied the good woman, "I should be unworthy the hospitality you have with so much goodness shown me, if I should refuse to satisfy your curiosity in that point, and am glad to have the honor to tell you that these curiosities are all to be met with in the same spot on the confines of this kingdom towards India. The road to it lies before your house, and whoever you send needs but follow it for 20 days, and on the 20th let him only ask the first person he meets where the speaking bird, singing tree, and yellow water are, and he will be informed." After saying this, she rose from her seat, took her leave, and went her way. The Princess Parizade's thoughts were so taken up with what the devout woman had told her of the speaking bird, singing tree, and yellow water, that she never perceived her departure till she wanted to ask her some question for her better information, for she thought that what she had told her was not a sufficient reason for exposing herself by undertaking a long journey, possibly to no purpose. However, she would not send after her, but endeavored to remember all she had told her, and when she thought she had recollected every word, took real pleasure in thinking of the satisfaction she should have if she could get these wonderful curiosities into her possession. But the difficulties she apprehended, and the fear of not succeeding, made her very uneasy. She was absorbed in these thoughts when her brothers returned from hunting, who, when they entered the great hall, instead of finding her lively and gay as she used to be, were amazed to see her so pensive, and hanging down her head as if something troubled her. "Sister," said Prince Bahman, "what has become of all your mirth and gaiety? Are you not well? Or has some misfortune befallen you? Has anybody given you reason to be so melancholy? Tell us, that we may know how to act, and give you some relief. If anyone has affronted you, we will resent his insolence." The princess remained in the same posture some time without answering, but at last lifted up her eyes to look at her brothers, and then held them down again, telling them nothing disturbed her. "Sister," said Prince Bahman, "you conceal the truth from us. There must be something of consequence. It is impossible we could observe so sudden a change if nothing was the matter with you. You would not have us satisfied with the evasive answer you have given. Do not conceal anything, unless you would have us suspect that you renounce the strict union which has hitherto subsisted between us from our infancy." The princess, who had not the smallest intention to offend her brothers, would not suffer them to entertain such a thought, but said, "When I told you nothing disturbed me, I meant nothing that was of importance to you, but to me it is of some consequence, and since you press me to tell you by our strict union and friendship, which are so dear to me, I will. You think, and I always believed so too, that this house was so complete that nothing was wanting, but this day I have learned that it wants 3 rarities, which would render it so perfect that no country seat in the world could be compared with it. These 3 things are the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the yellow water." After she had informed them wherein consisted the excellency of these rarities, "A devout woman," added she, "has made this discovery to me, told me the place where they are to be found, and the way thither. Perhaps you may imagine these things to be trifles, and of little consequence to render our house complete, that without these additions it will always be thought sufficiently elegant with what it already contains, and that we can do without them. You may think as you please, but I cannot help telling you that I am persuaded they are absolutely necessary, and I shall not be easy without them. Therefore, whether you value them or not, I desire you to consider what person you may think proper for me to send in search of the curiosities I have mentioned." "Sister," replied Prince Bahman, "nothing can concern you in which we have not an equal interest. It is enough that you have an earnest desire for the things you mentioned to oblige us to take the same interest. But if you had not, we feel ourselves inclined of our own accord and for our own individual satisfaction. I am persuaded my brother is of the same opinion, and therefore we ought to undertake this conquest. For the importance and singularity of the undertaking deserve that name. I will take that charge upon myself. Only tell me the place and the way to it, and I will defer my journey no longer than till tomorrow." "Brother," said Prince Perviz, "it is not proper that you, who are the head and director of our family, should be absent. I desire my sister would join with me to oblige you to abandon your design, and allow me to undertake it. I hope to acquit myself as well as you, and it will be a more regular proceeding." "I am persuaded of your goodwill, brother," replied Prince Bahman, "and that you would succeed as well as myself in this journey, but I have resolved, and will undertake it. You shall stay at home with our sister, and I need not recommend her to you." He spent the remainder of the day in making preparations for his journey, and informing himself from the princess of the directions which the devout woman had left her. The next morning Bahman mounted his horse, and Perviz and the princess embraced and wished him a good journey. But in the midst of their adieus the princess recollected what she had not thought of before. "Brother," said she, "I had quite forgotten the accidents which attend travellers. Who knows whether I shall ever see you again? Alight, I beseech you, and give up this journey. I would rather be deprived of the sight and possession of the speaking bird, singing tree, and yellow water, than run the risk of never seeing you more." "Sister," replied Bahman, smiling at the sudden fears of the princess, "my resolution is fixed, but were it not, I should determine upon it now, and you must allow me to execute it. The accidents you speak of befall only those who are unfortunate, but there are more who are not so. However, as events are uncertain, and I may fail in this undertaking, All I can do is to leave you this knife." Bahman, pulling a knife from his vestband and presenting it in the sheath to the princess, said, "Take this knife, sister, and give yourself the trouble sometimes to pull it out of the sheath. While you see it clean as it is now, it will be a sign that I am alive. But if you find it stained with blood, then you may believe me dead, and indulge me with your prayers." The princess could obtain nothing more of Bahman. He bade adieu to her and Prince Perviz for the last time and rode away. When he got into the road, he never turned to the right hand nor the left, but went directly forward towards India. The 20th day he perceived on the roadside a hideous old man, who sat under a tree some small distance from a thatched house, which was his retreat from the weather. His eyebrows were as white as snow, as was also the hair of his head. His whiskers covered his mouth, and his beard and hair reached down to his feet. The nails of his hands and feet were grown to an extensive length. A flat-brought umbrella covered his head. He had no clothes, but only a mat thrown round his body. This old man was a dervish, for many years retired from the world to give himself up entirely to the service of God, so that at last he became what we have described. Prince Bahman, who had been all that morning very attentive to see if he could meet with anybody who could give him information of the place he was in search of, stopped when he came near the dervish, alighted, in conformity to the directions which the devout woman had given the Princess Parizadeh, and leading his horse by the bridle, advanced towards him, and saluting him said, "God prolong your days, good father, and grant you the accomplishment of your desires." The dervish returned the prince's salutation, but so unintelligibly that he could not understand one word he said. Prince Bahman, perceiving that this difficulty proceeded from the dervish's whiskers hanging over his mouth, and unwilling to go any farther without the instructions he wanted, pulled out a pair of scissors he had about him, and having tied his horse to a branch of the tree, said, "Good dervish, I want to have some talk with you, but your whiskers prevent my understanding what you say, and if you will consent, I will cut off some part of them and of your eyebrows, which disfigure you so much that you look more like a bear than a man." The dervish did not oppose the offer, and when the prince had cut off as much hair as he thought fit, he perceived that the dervish had a good complexion, and that he did not seem so old as he really was. "Good dervish," said he, "if I had a glass, I would show you how young you look. You are now a man, but before nobody could tell what you were." The kind behavior of Prince Bahman made the dervish smile and return his compliment. "Sir," said he, "whoever you are, I am obliged by the good office you have performed, and am ready to show my gratitude by doing anything in my power for you. You must have alighted here upon some account or other. Tell me what it is, and I will endeavor to serve you." "Good dervish," replied Prince Bahman, "I am in search of the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the yellow water. I know these three rarities are not far from hence, but cannot tell exactly the place where they are to be found. If you know, I conjure you to show me the way, that I may not lose my labor after so long a journey." The prince, while he spoke, observed that the dervish changed countenance, held down his eyes, looked very serious, and instead of making any reply remained silent, which obliged him to say to him again, "Good father, I fancy you heard me. Tell me whether you know what I ask you, that I may not lose my time, but inform myself somewhere else." At last the dervish broke silence. "Sir," said he to Prince Bahman, "I know the way you ask of me, but the regard which I conceived for you the first moment I saw you, and which has grown stronger by the service you have done me, kept me in suspense whether I should give you the satisfaction you desire." "What motive can hinder you?" replied the prince, "and what difficulties do you find in so doing?" "I will tell you," replied the dervish. "The danger you are going to expose yourself to is greater than any you suppose. A number of gentlemen of as much bravery and courage as you can possibly possess have passed this way, and asked me the same question. When I had used all my endeavors to persuade them to desist, they would not believe me. At last I yielded to their importunities. I was compelled to show them the way, and I can assure you they have all perished, for I have not seen one come back. Therefore, if you have any regard for your life, take my advice, go no farther, but return home." Prince Bahman persisted in his resolution. "I will not suppose," said he to the dervish, "but that your advice is sincere. I am obliged to you for the friendship you express for me, but whatever may be the danger, nothing shall make me change my intention. Whoever attacks me, I am well armed, and can say I am as brave as anyone. But they who will attack you are not to be seen," replied the dervish. "How will you defend yourself against invisible persons?" "It is no matter," answered the prince. "All you say shall not persuade me to do anything contrary to my duty. Since you know the way, I conjure you once more to inform me." When the dervish found he could not prevail upon Prince Bahman, and that he was obstinately bent to pursue his journey notwithstanding his friendly remonstrance, He put his hand into a bag that lay by him and pulled out a bowl, which he presented to him. "Since I cannot prevail on you to attend to my advice," said he, "take this bowl. When you are on horseback, throw it before you, and follow it to the foot of a mountain, where it will stop. As soon as the bowl stops, alight. Leave your horse with the bridle over his neck, and he will stand in the same place till you return. As you ascend, you will see on your right and left a great number of large black stones, and will hear on all sides a confusion of voices, which will utter 1,000 injurious abuses to discourage you and prevent you reaching the summit of the mountain. Be not afraid, but above all things do not turn your head to look behind you, for in that instant you will be changed into such a black stone as those you see, which are all youths who have failed in this enterprise. If you escape the danger of which I give you but a faint idea, and get to the top of the mountain, you will see a cage, and in that cage is the bird you seek. Ask him which are the singing tree and the yellow water, and he will tell you. I have nothing more to say. This is what you have to do, and the danger you have to avoid. But if you are prudent, you will take my advice and not expose your life. Consider once more, while you have time, that the difficulty is almost insuperable." "I am obliged to you for your repeated advice," replied Prince Bahman after he received the bowl, "but cannot follow it. However, I will endeavor to conform myself to that part of it which bids me not look behind me as I shall ascend the mountain, and I hope to come and see you again soon, and thank you when I have obtained what I am seeking." After these words, to which the dervish made no answer other than that he should be overjoyed to see him again, the prince mounted his horse, took his leave of the dervish with a respectful salute, and threw the bowl before him. The bowl rolled away unceasingly, with as much swiftness as when Prince Bahman first hurled it from his hand, which obliged him to put his horse to the same pace to avoid losing sight of it, and when it had reached the foot of the mountain it stopped. The prince alighted from his horse, laid the bridle on his neck, and having first surveyed the mountain and seen the black stones, began to ascend, but had not gone 4 steps before he heard the voices mentioned by the dervish, though he could see nobody. Some said, "Where is that fool going? Where is he going? What would he have? Do not let him pass." Others, "Stop him, catch him, kill him." And others, with a voice like thunder, "Thief, assassin, murderer!" While some in a gibing tone cried, "No, no, do not hurt him. Let the pretty fellow pass. The cage and the bird are kept for him." Notwithstanding all these troublesome voices, Prince Bahman ascended with courage and resolution for some time, but the voices redoubled with so loud a din near him, both behind and before, that at last he was seized with dread, his legs trembled under him, he staggered, and finding that his strength failed him, he forgot the dervish's advice, turned about to run down the hill, and was that instant changed into a black stone, a metamorphosis which had happened to many before him who had attempted the ascent. His horse likewise underwent the same change. From the time of Prince Bahman's departure, the Princess Parizadeh always wore the knife and sheath in her girdle, and pulled it out several times a day to know whether her brother was alive. She had the consolation to understand he was in perfect health, and to talk of him frequently with Prince Perviz, who sometimes prevented her by asking her what news. On the fatal day that Prince Bahman was transformed into a stone, as Prince Perviz and the princess were talking together in the evening, as usual, the prince desired his sister to pull out the knife to know how their brother did. The princess readily complied, and seeing the blood run down the point, was seized with so much horror that she threw it down. "Oh, my dear brother," she cried, "I have been the cause of your death, and shall never see you more. Why did I tell you of this speaking bird, singing tree, and yellow water? Or rather, of what importance was it to me to know whether the devout woman thought this house ugly or handsome, or complete or not? I wish to heaven she had never addressed herself to me. Deceitful hypocrite," added she, "is this the return you have made for the kind reception I gave you? Why did you tell me of a bird, a tree, and a water, which, imaginary as I am persuaded they are, by my dear brother's death, yet disturb me by your enchantment?" Prince Perviz was as much afflicted at the death of Prince Bahman as the princess, but not to waste time in needless regret, as he knew that she still passionately desired possession of the speaking bird, the singing tree, and the golden water, he interrupted her, saying, "Sister, our regret for our brother is vain and useless. Our grief and lamentations cannot restore him to life. It is the will of God, we must submit to it, and adore the decrees of the Almighty without searching into them. Why should you now doubt of the truth of what the holy woman told you? Do you think she spoke to you of 3 things that were not in being, and that she invented them on purpose to deceive you, who had given her no cause to do so, but received her with so much goodness and civility? Let us rather believe that our brother's death is owing to some error on his part, or some accident which we cannot conceive. It ought not therefore prevent us from pursuing our object. I offered to go this journey, and am now more resolved than ever. His example has no effect upon my resolution. Tomorrow I will depart." The princess did all she could to dissuade Prince Perviz, conjuring him not to expose her to the danger of losing two brothers, but he was obstinate, and all the remonstrances she could urge had no effect upon him. Before he went, that she might know what success he had, he left her a string of 100 pearls, telling her that if they would not run when she should count them upon the string, but remain fixed, that would be a certain sign he had undergone the same fate as his brother, but at the same time told her he hoped it would never happen, but that he should have the happiness to see her again to their mutual satisfaction. End of section 10. Recording by Beth Blakely.